Hello and welcome once again to my channel. My name is Evans. In our last lectures, we created our model for our driver registration, and we also registered the model in our admin.py. Now, in these lectures, we're trying to create an application, a web application that has the functionalities of Uber, Airbnb, and booking.com. So on our platform, users will be able to log in, order for a ride, and then users can also rent rooms from hotels and also from individuals, just the way it's done on Airbnb. So this is a full stack web application where we're using Python and Django for our backend, and then we're using HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and Bootstrap for the front end. Now, this is not the first lectures in this tutorial series. We have about 13 lectures already. So if you go to my playlist, you can filter out the video that you want to watch. So this is my playlist, and then inside this playlist, I have the first one is utility lessons, where I'm teaching random stuff in programming. Java, C#, Kubernetes, Docker, Git and version control, and all the rest. I'll be teaching all of that inside this playlist. And then inside this playlist, Django and React's employee record management web app, I'm teaching how to build a full stack web application using React for the front end and Python and Django for the back end. And inside this playlist, Python Django tutorial web app that has functionalities of Airbnb, booking.com, and Uber. We're building a full stack web application that has the functionalities of Airbnb, Booking, and Uber. And then we're using Python and Django for our backend, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and Bootstrap for the front end. So as you can see, we already have 13 videos inside this playlist. Yeah, so in today's lectures, we will create our forms.py, and then we'll also create our function that is going to capture the user inputs from our HTML templates and save it into the database. Now, the first thing you should do is to create a file called forms.py in your driver app. So this is my driver app, and this is, I have authentication app, I have driver app, I have vendor app. So this vendor is for hotels and for individuals who want to list their rooms or their hotels on our platform. While the driver app is going to have the functionalities of the code that has to do with driver registration, any driver that wants to register on our web application so that people can book them for a ride, then this driver app will have all the codes and functionalities inside of it. And authentication is for user account creation, user account management, password creation, modification, and all the rest. So to create our forms for our driver registration, so that we can render our models on the HTML template and so drivers can register, you need to go to this driver app. So click to expand it, and then right click, and then create a new file, call it forms.py. So the first thing you want to do is you import from Django, import forms. Now, the next thing you want to do is to import the model that you want to use. So I'm gonna say from dot models import driver. This is the exact same thing we did for our vendor registration configuration. And if you've been following along, you should understand this basic stuff by now. So this driver is our model. If you go to the driver app and models.py, you're gonna see we have a driver model. So we want to display all these fields so the user can, input their plate number, select their vehicle type, vendor's log is gonna be generated automatically. They will be able to upload their vendor license, and then we'll pick the user, as the registration is ongoing. So I'll go back to my forms.py. So I said form.models import driver. Now the next thing we want to import is we want to import the function we created for image only validation. If you remember, while we are creating our vendor form, I'll go to my vendor app and then forms.py. Here we said for vendor license, because we need them to upload their vendor license, we created a function called allow only image validators. So when they want to upload their vendor license, it will only allow them upload image and nothing more. So you have to do the same thing for the driver as well, because we want the drivers to upload their driver's license. So we will import that function as well. So to import it here, you simply say from authentication dot validators imports allow only image validators. This is the location of this function. Now we are inside our driver app, but then this function is in our authentication app. That's why we said from authentication. So I'll go to my authentication app, expand it, authentication dot validators. Where is validators? This is it, validators import allow only image. So I go inside the validators.py and then I will go up. This is it, allow only image validators. So this function is gonna allow the user select only JPG, PNG or JPEG file formats. If the driver tries to upload a file that is not one of these formats, it's gonna say unsupported file format selected. So I'll go back to my driver app and go back to my forms. So in here I have imported it. Now the next thing you want to do is to create a class. So I'm gonna call my class driver reg form. You can call yours whatever you want. So driver registration forms. I'm gonna open parentheses. I'll say forms dot model form. Model form. Yeah, that is it. Now the next thing you need to do is to state the model that you want to use. So just simply say model equals, which of the model do I want to use? I want to use my driver model. So I'll go to my driver app where I am already, click on models.py, and then this is it, this model. That's what I want to use because I want the user to fill these details. So I'm gonna copy this model and then I'll go to back to my forms.py and then I'm gonna paste it. This is it, model equals driver. Now remember, I have already imported the driver model here from .models import driver. Now the next thing you need to do is to state the fields you want to use in this model, just like we did for our vendor registration. Now I'll go to my vendor app and then I'll go to my forms.py. Now as you can see, I stated model equals vendor registration and I said field equals vendor name, vendor license, and vendor type. These are the fields I want to use in the model. So this is exact same thing we're gonna do for our driver form as well, but I'm gonna take a different approach so you understand it better. Now I'll go back to my driver app, and then I go to my forms.py. Now, instead of saying fields equals, I'm gonna use exclude equals. So now I'll go to my models.py and explain to you. While the driver is registering on our platform, the driver cannot select user. This will be automatically picked up. We're gonna create the user account immediately the driver registers and upload this information. So this will be excluded from the forms. Now, user profile will also be excluded from the forms because once the driver registered, we're gonna automatically create their user profile. And then later on in the projects, that user profile can be modified. Now, as you can see, I said user equals models dot one-to-one field user. So this is a user model that takes care of password and email. So let me go to my authentication app where this user model is, click on it, and then go to my models.py. You're gonna see the user model. This is it. So it takes care of email and username and password, while the user profile, this is it, will take care of the first name, last name, profile picture, date of birth, address, and all the rest. So yeah, that is that. Now I'll go back to my driver app and to my model. So we don't need user, we don't need user profile, we need plate number, because we want the driver to type in their plate number. We need vehicle type because the driver has to select their vehicle type. Driver's log will be automatically generated, so we don't need to let the driver compute this. Now, driver license, we need it because the driver needs to upload the driver license. For the driver's log, we're gonna generate it automatically, maybe by concatenating the driver name and the driver ID to create a unique identifier. Now, is approved. We don't need to display it to the driver. When the driver registers on the platform, it's gonna be the status of the approval is gonna be false until an admin reviews the information, reviews the license, and then changes to true. So this is a Boolean field, and by default it will be false. Now, created that and modified that. These are dates and time. We don't also need the driver to select or impute this. Once the driver clicks uploads this information and types in the required information and click on save, so the system will automatically save the date and time that the account was created into this field called created at. And modify that is whenever they modify their user profile, it's also gonna pick the date and time. So this is for audit purposes. Now, so we are excluding, if I am using fields, then I will simply say this. I will open a square bracket and then I will type in the fields that I need. So I'm gonna say I need use a plate number. I need plate number. I'll put it in here, comma. I need vehicle type. I need vehicle type. Then comma. Then I need not driver's log, just the field that the driver has to input. So driver license. I need, that's all. Now, if you are using exclude, which is the opposite of fields, it's gonna be like this. You state the fields that you don't want the driver to see. So the first one is user. I don't need user. exclude user, exclude user profile, models, exclude driver's log, exclude is approved, created that, and modify that. So let me just copy these three so I don't come back to them again. So go to my forms.py. I'm gonna paste it here first and take this, exclude this, and comma, quotes, created that, comma, and modify that. So what you should do is go for the option that will let you type the list, number of fields. So right now, using field, plate number, vehicle, and driver license is shorter. When you're excluding, we have more fields to exclude, so this requires more time. So you should go with this if this is shorter for you, or you should go with this if this is shorter for you. Now, in the event that you don't want to exclude any field, you simply omit fields and exclude. So I'm gonna comment out these two, control and hash, shift and so you highlight, you press control and /. So once you put it in the comments, it means these fields will not be active again. So if you want to use all the fields in your model, you don't need to state fields and you don't need to state exclude. Just say model equals driver, that's all. It's gonna pick all the field. But in this case, we don't want all the field because like I explained earlier, some of the fields, we're gonna generate them automatically. So I'll go back to my forms.py. So for our vendor registration, I used fields. So for this, even though for the driver registration, even though exclude is longer, I'm gonna use it so you have more understanding of how everything works. So I'm gonna use it, then I'll comment out this. You can use whatever you want, this is just a tutorial, so that is it. So now this is enough. With what we've done now, we can render the form on our HTML templates and the user can create their driver account if we write the views. But we want some other functionalities with our form, so we're gonna do a few stuff now. We need to apply these image only validators to our driver license, because if we leave it like this, then it's not gonna be applied and the driver can upload whatever file format they want. So what you need to do is, where is my model? I will go to my driver and my models.py, and you pick the driver license, copy it. I like to copy my field names so I don't make a mistake while typing them. Now you come over to this top and press your enter key, paste it. So driver license, now you say equals forms dot file field. So in Django, file field will allow you select from the computer. Now open parentheses, I'm gonna say, so in Django, file field will enable you or the user upload a file, maybe an image, PDF, Word, or whatever file you want to upload. And then inside this parentheses, you say label equals driver's license. You can make your label whatever you want, so beside the input icon, we're gonna have driver license, or I'm just gonna say yeah, driver license is okay, then I'm gonna use help text, to display further information. So I'll put comma, say help underscore text equals please upload your driver's license, and it has to be image only. Yeah, so let me collapse this so my screen is bigger. Now your help text can be whatever you want. It can be whatever message you want, so this is what I'm using. Yeah, you can type whatever you want. So like I said, so we'll have a field, a file upload field, and then on top of it, it's gonna have a label saying driver's license. Then below it, you will see this long message, that is gonna be small because help text is usually small. Please upload your driver's license. The font size is usually small. It's like using the small tag in HTML. Then we're gonna use this function now for this field so that it will accept image only. Now put a comma and you say validators equals allow only image validators, and you should put this in a square brackets. Yeah, that's it. So I can break it down to multiple lines so it doesn't get too long. I'm gonna break it from here. Help text equals, I'm gonna reduce this image only. I'm just gonna reduce this. Please upload image only, and then I'm gonna break this as well to the next line. So yeah, this is it. Validators equals allow only image validators. Yeah, so we're done with our driver license. Now you need to come here and type widgets equals forms dot file inputs, and then open parentheses and a comma. This is because whenever you want to set other properties for your file field, other attributes or other behaviors, such as this allowing only image validators, you need to state this, otherwise it's not gonna work. So the next thing we need to do is to state the text that we want to display behind the plate number. Now for our driver's license, we've already stated that there should be a label called driver's license above the input field. So we can also do that for our plate number and for our vehicle type as well. If we don't do that and we leave it by default, then it's just gonna have the default model name behind this plate number field and this vehicle field. So how to do that? Now you come over this line, go to the next line. After this exclude, or if you're using field, after the field you type widgets equals open a curly brace, then inside of it you state plate number. So parent quotes plate number, like that, and then semicolon, you say forms dot text input, then attribute equals, you open curly brace and type inside the quotes placeholder, and then colon, quotes, and then you type your message. Enter your vehicle plate number. That's it. Now the next thing we need to do is so we've done for driver license, we've done for plate number. Let's also customize it for vehicle type. Yeah, so go to the next line, the same thing, quotes, vehicle type, and then vehicle type is gonna be select field. So I'm gonna say forms dot select, forms dot select, and comma. We are using select because, let me go to the models now. Go to the driver app and the models.py. You see vehicle type, we said it's equals models.character field, max length equals 100, choices equals vehicle type. This vehicle type, we defined a tuple here. This is it, vehicle type. So the vehicle type we have is bike and car. So this is gonna be, once you make it a choices field in Django, once you declare a field as a choices field, it becomes a drop down like a combo box. So the user can have the option to select either bike or car. Now if you think that your application needs other vehicle type for a ride sharing web application, then you can simply include it here. Now I'll go back to my forms.py. So that's why we said forms.select. Text input is just a text field, while forms.select is a combo box where you can select from an option. Yeah, so if you want to add a help text to maybe our vehicle type as well, because it's a combo box, we can add something like a help text for it. So it's gonna give, the combo box is gonna have other description below it. So just come to this next line and type help underscore text equals open curly brace, and then inside it, we need help text for vehicle type. So I'm gonna copy it and then quotes, put it here, and then you simply say inside the quotes, please select your drop down, please select your vehicle type from the drop down. It's as simple as that. If you want to display help text for your plate number, you can also do the same thing, so help underscore text equals you select the field plate number, put it in here, and then you display your message here. Please type in your vehicle plate number. Yeah, this is it, but I don't want a help text for my plate number, so I'm just gonna remove it. So these are just other attributes we've added to our forms. They are not really necessary, but if you want to customize your form more, then you have to do all of this. So with this, now we're done with our forms. Yeah, so for our driver registration forms, we use just plate number, vehicle type, and driver's license. These are the fields that the driver will have control over, that they are going to input their information. But in this form, we didn't use field, rather we use exclude. So because we are excluding these other fields, it means these other three fields will be the one that we're using. But if you use fields, If you use field, for example, I'm gonna uncomment it, then you have to take up this, so this is what we use: plate number. This is our customization for plate number. Forms or text inputs, attribute equals placeholder, enter your vehicle plate number. If you don't want it, you can take it off. And then vehicle type, we did forms or select, so it's gonna be a drop down, and then we say help text is please select your vehicle type from the drop down, and then driver's license as well, so that is it. Now the next thing we're gonna do is we need to write our function that is gonna take the inputs from this form, and then save into the database. So now you need to go to your views.py inside your driver app, and then you define your function by saying dev. So I'll call my function name driver reg, and then I open parentheses, I say request, and then return render open parentheses request, comma, and then the path to my HTML file. So I'm gonna put it inside a folder called driver / driver reg.html. So I need to import this render. That's why I'm having an error on it. So I'm gonna say from Django .shortcuts import render. Then I will import redirect as well, so we'll use it later. Redirect. So it means I need to create a folder now called driver, and then inside the folder I need to create a file called driverreg.html so that we'll display the driver registration form on this driverreg.html. So you can call yours whatever you want. So go to your template folder, you see it, this is it, right click on it, and then click on new folder, and then you call it driver. And inside of the driver folder you create a file called driverreg.html. So you can call yours whatever you want to call it, it doesn't matter. You can call this folder whatever you want. You can also call this driverreg.html whatever you want. And for this request, it can be anything at all. So if I say rec, for example, then this has to be rec. If I call this Ohio, this also has to be Ohio. And if I call this London, this has to be London. So but by convention we say request. So the first thing I want to do is I want to check if the person that is trying to register, the driver that is trying to register, already has an account and is logged in. So I will say if request .user .is _ authenticated : then I will display a warning message. So I'm gonna say messages .warning request parentheses you are already logged in. The reason is because some people already have an account and they're already logged in, but they're just trying to create a new account again. So we don't want to allow that. And now you need to import these messages. That's why we are having an error, because we've not imported it. So you import it from django.contrib. So come to this tab and you say from django.contrib import messages. So now the error message is gone. And if the user is already authenticated, we need to redirect the user back to the dashboard or the home page. But for now, we don't have a driver dashboard, so I'm just gonna redirect to the home page. And then when we create the driver dashboard, if this happens, then the person is going to be redirected back to their dashboard. So I'm gonna come here and say return redirect, open parentheses in quotes, and then home. Remember, we created a URL called home, so I'm gonna show you. If I go to my book and write folder, which is a parent folder, go to urls.py, so you're gonna see home. So this is the home page, and this is our landing page because it has an empty string, yeah. So I'll go back to my driver app and views.py. So now if the request is authenticated, this should happen. What if the user is not authenticated? So you need to say elif request dot method equals to post. So it means if the user is trying to save the form, what should we do? Now you need to import all the forms that we have created, and the first form that you need to import is this. Go to my forms.py and then this driver reg form. So I'm just gonna copy it. I'll go back to my views.py and then come to this tab and say form dot import form.forms import driver reg form. So I'm using dots because forms.py and this view is inside the same folder. That's why I'm using form dots. So I'm gonna use this form that I just imported. So I will say v_form equals this driver reg form, then open parentheses. I will say request.post, comma, request.files. I'm using request.files because on this driver registration form, we need to allow the drivers to upload their driver's license. So this is just a variable name. You can call yours whatever you want. You can call it form or driver form or whatever you want. Now the next form I need to import is the user profile form. Remember, when we created our authentication app, we created a model, let me show you, called user profile. Now the driver, they are also users, so we also need to capture their first name, their last name, their profile picture, date of birth, address, and so on. So we also need this model, and for this model we created a form. If I go to my authentication app, go to my forms.py, you're gonna see we created a form called profile form. Now this profile form, and okay, let me just go back to my driver. I'm just gonna copy this form. This profile form is using, we created this profile form for this user profile. So I'm gonna go back to my driver app and my views.py, then I'll come here and import it. From authentication dot forms import profile form. So this time around we are not saying from dots like we did for the driver reg form, because like I said, the driver reg form and our views.py, they are inside the same driver app. That's why I use from dots. But for this profile form, it is inside authentication app. That's why I say from authentication.forms import profile form, authentication.forms. For this as well, if I want, I can say from driver.forms import driver reg form. Yeah, so whether I spell out the part fully or I use dots is gonna work. So I'm gonna take off this. Now you come to this place now and you say, I'll call it the profile, for example, equals this profile form. And then for this as well, I'm also gonna say request dot post, comma, request dot files. The reason is because for this profile form, the user also needs to upload their profile image and other files. That's why we're using request.files. Otherwise, we're just gonna leave it at request.post. Now, this driver registration form and the profile form can be combined. So I can easily go to my driver model, and then in this my driver model, I can include fields like first name, last name, username, date of birth, nationality, and all the rest. But separating these two forms means that I can use this form in other modules and other apps as well. As you know, we use this profile form for our vendor registration as well. So if I go to my vendor, I go to vendor views.py, you're gonna see we use a profile form. So if I had combined the profile form with the vendor registration form, then I will need to write more codes for my driver registration as well. So I'll need to start adding the first name, last name, son name, and all the rest. But now, because the forms are different, I can use it for my user registration, I can use it for my vendor registration, I can also use it for my driver registration. Now the last form that we need to import is the user form. The user form manages the email and password, and login details. So if I go to my authentication and forms.py, you're gonna see the form. This is it, user register form. So we also need the driver to be able to create their username, their email, and their password. So I'm gonna copy this as well. I'll go back to my driver app, to my views.py. So I'm also gonna import it. So I have from authentication.forms, import profile form, comma, import user form. So these two forms, they are inside authentication.forms. So yeah, there is no need to start separating it and say from authentication.forms import user registration form again. Instead, I'll just put a comma and then call this. So I'm gonna come here and I'll call it user reg form equals this. So for this, I don't need request.files because we are not uploading any files. So I'm just gonna say request.post. Request.post. That's also. I'm gonna add form to this, the profile form, profile underscore form. Yeah, you can call yours whatever you want. They are just variable names. Now the next thing I want to do is to write some conditional statements to check if the forms are valid. So if the user uploaded the necessary files, they inputted a valid username, valid password, valid driver license, and just valid information. So to do that, I'm gonna say if the underscore form dot is underscore valid, open parentheses, and the next one is gonna be the profile form dot is underscore valid, open parentheses, and user reg form dot is underscore valid. So if these three forms are valid, what am I gonna do? I'll say password, this is a variable name, equals form it's gonna be user reg form dot cleaned data, cleaned underscore data, cleaned clean underscore is cleaned underscore data, and then I open square brackets, parent quotes, and then I will say password. So I'm saying if dform is valid, dform is our driver reg form, and the profile form is valid, and user reg form is valid, this is a variable name, password equals user reg form dot clean data password. So this password is coming from this user reg form. Now I'll go to my user reg form. You're gonna say authentication, and then forms, and then user registration form. So this is it, password. So I'll use password 1 because I declared it as password 1. Now, so I'll go back to my driver app and my views.py, and then I'll say password 1. Now I'm going to explain what cleaned underscore data does. So cleaned underscore data is going to validate this password field to make sure that it has a correct combination of characters. It's a valid password and it meets the Django password format. So that's what this cleaned underscore data is gonna do. If your password does not meet the minimum length, it's gonna tell you that your input is invalid, and also give you suggestion on the kind of combination that you can use or you cannot use. So this is basically exactly the same thing that we did for our vendor registration. So if I go to my vendor app and I go to views.py, you're gonna see it's the same thing. So to speed up the code, you can just copy the code that we did for vendor registration and then modify it. But as a beginner, I don't advise you to copy code. You need to type it yourself so that you can perfect it. You make mistakes and then you correct your mistakes, and that's the only way you can learn effectively. So we're just gonna keep on typing the codes now, and I'll go back to my driver app, and then I go to my views.py. So we're gonna continue now. Now the next thing you need to do is you say I'll just give it a variable name, user equals d underscore form dot save, and then I say commit equals false. It shouldn't commit it to the database yet because we need to perform other action. Then I need to say user dot set underscore password. User dot set underscore password, open parentheses, so password. So we don't want to commit the changes yet because we need to assign the password to the user, and this is the variable name. So we're saying user equals d underscore form dot save. So this user is now holding all the inputs on this d form, and then I'm saying user dot set password, this password that we got by cleaning the data from password 1. So and then I'll need to say user dot role equals user dot driver. So this is an error. It's not supposed to be the form. So we're working on our user registration form. So I need to change that, copy this and post it here. So this is for our user registration form. That's why we trying to save the password and assigning it to the user. So I'm saying password equals user reg form, and remember this user reg form, we created a form. If you go to the authentication app, you go to forms, you see user reg form. It's using a model called user. So this user, like I explained before, is a model that holds the email, the password, and the login details. So I'll go back to my views.py, and then I'm saying this is a variable name now. User equals user reg form dot save commit equals false. Now user dot set underscore password is password. Now user dot role equals user dot driver. Now if I go to this user reg form, you will see authentication models. This is my user model. Then now I'm saying the user.role is driver, because while creating the user, we're specifying if the user is a vendor or is a customer or is a driver. And then when you come to this place, let me show you where I use it. Role choice is vendor, customer, and driver. This is the role. So role equals models dot positive small integer field, choice is equals role choice, and this role choice has this option, so we can select from maybe vendor, customer, or driver. But I don't want the user to select this option. I don't want the user to specify if they are a customer or they are vendor or a driver. Our duty is to drop the driver registration link. So once they are using that driver registration link, it automatically assigns their role as a driver. That's why I'm saying user.role equals user.driver. So now this is supposed to be user model. Now because on our model authentication app models.py, you see user, this is the model, and the role, this is the role. So on our driver app, it needs to be user. So you need to import this user model now. So I'm gonna say from authentication dot models imports user. Yeah, so this is correct. So the user.role equals user.driver. Now this role, let me check. I'll go back to my authentication app, models.py. This is its role. So that field is small letters. So role, yeah. So yeah, we're done with our user registration form. And yeah, I've explained everything. This is what we've been doing on our vendor registration as well. And this user, we are using this model because if you see, this user register form uses this model. So if you go to the authentication app, you'll see it uses this model. Now over to the next form. So we're gonna do for the profile form and driver reg form as well. So I'm gonna declare a variable. I'll just call it driver equals this d form, d underscore form dot save, and then commit equals false as well, because we need to pass some information now. So I'm gonna say driver dot user equals user. Now let me explain this. This is a variable name that holds the driver form. So whatever input they've done on our d form will be held inside driver variable. And then we're saying driver.user equals user. I will show you. So if I go to my driver app and then the models.py, you're gonna see driver, this driver model. Okay, let me use a different variable name so it doesn't confuse you. I'll say driver arrow is just a variable name, so I'll say driver arrow as well equals d form dot save commit equals false. Now this deform is using our driver model. Go to the model, you see driver, and then on this driver model we have a field called user. Remember I told you that we want the user to only input their vehicle, their plate number, select their vehicle type, and upload their driver's license. Now for the user, we're gonna assign it to them. For the user profile, we're gonna create a user profile for the driver that is registering, and then for the driver's log, we're gonna generate it. Is approved by default is false until the admin check the information and ensures that the driver meets the criteria before they change this to true. And then created that, this is gonna be automatically captured once the form is saved. Modify that also whenever the driver make modification to their profile, it's gonna save the date and time. So we have a field called user. Now I'll go back to my views.py. So I'm saying driver.user. Go to the model driver.user. This is a one-to-one field that is calling from the user model. So I'm gonna go here. So driver.user equals user. This user is this user that we've already created here. So we are saying this driver, the user profile should use this user profile that we've just created above. So that is it. Now the next field I want to capture is the slug field. So I'm gonna say driver arrow dot slug. Let me go to the models and check what I use. I use driver slug. So I'm gonna copy this. I'll go to my views.py and say driver arrow dot slug field, then equals, let me use slugify. I'm gonna explain slugify. I'm gonna say okay, let me capture the driver plate number and then slugify it. So I'm gonna come here and say driver underscore plates underscore number. This is just a variable name, equals d underscore form dot clean underscore data. So clean underscore data is gonna be plate number. Which of the field did I use for the plate number? I'll go to my models.py. This is its plate number. So I'll copy it, go to my views, put parentheses plate number. So now I've assigned the plate number that the driver is gonna input into a variable called the plate number. Do you understand? So assuming I don't want to slugify the plate number, then I don't need this. So slugify is gonna convert a string into a slug. So let me just give an example. If you have something like maybe your blog title is who wants to be a millionaire, for example, and then if I slugify this string, it's gonna make it who dash who wants to be a millionaire, so something like this. So I want to slugify the driver plate number and also the driver ID to create a unique identifier. And the reason why I'm doing this is in the event that two drivers registers with the same name. For example, driver A registers as Elvis, and then driver B also registers as Elvis, as their first name, or maybe their first name and their surname is the same, but their ID can never be the same. So driver 1 will have ID 1 and driver 2 will have ID 2. So if I create a slug, it's gonna be something like Elvis underscore or dash 1, and then the second driver is gonna be Elvis dash 2. So this is a unique identifier, and so to create this slug, I want to capture their plate number, and that's why I created this variable and then passing the plate number input to this variable. Otherwise, if I didn't need this slug, then I don't need this. I wouldn't have done this. So now we need to import this slugify function. Otherwise, we will have an error, as you can see. So go up and in your import, so it's a form django.templates.default-filters import slugify. So I'm saying driver arrow dot driver underscore slug equals slugify. Then I'm gonna pass this variable I declared here, the plate number, slugify this, and then plus quotes. I'll put a dash. You can put underscore if you want, or whatever you want. So I'm gonna put a dash, and then I'm gonna concatenate it with plus st arrow. So I'm gonna capture the user ID. So user.id. Now, if you look at my model, my user model, I don't have any field called ID. So I'll go to my user model. It's in my authentication app. I go to models.py. You can see there's no ID, but by default in Django, when you create a record, it adds an ID field. So you create the first record, the ID is gonna be 1. You create the second one, is gonna be 2. It adds an ID field or a PK field. PK is primary key. So I can come here and say user.pk or user.id. So this field is gonna be, if the plate number is arrow n 156, is gonna add a dash. User ID will be, if the user ID is 2, it's just gonna be 2. So this is it. So this driver slug field, models.py, this is it. So we've captured the driver slug, and then I go back to my views.py. So this is it. This is how we capture the driver slug. Now I need to do for, so I've done for driver reg, user reg, I've done for d underscore form. So I'm gonna do for the profile as well, this profile form, to capture their profile. So I'm gonna declare a variable. I'll just call it maybe driver underscore profile. Equals user underscore profile. Let me see. So I'll go to my authentication app. I go to my models, and then let me check user profile. So I need to import this now. Control C. I'll go to my driver app and my views.py. So I'm gonna import this here. So I have from authentication.models import user, comma, and then user profile. So I'll come here, I'll declare a variable. I say driver underscore profile equals user underscore profile dot get dot objects dot get parenthesis user equals user. So this means this user profile model, I'll go back to my authentication app and show you models.py. This is user profile model. It has a field called user. So on this field, it's a one-to-one field user. This model, this user with capital letter, is this field that I'm calling. So I'm saying one user can only have one user account. That means you can only have one email, one password on the account. If you're trying to register with the same email and password, then it's gonna throw you an error. So it has, this user profile has a field called user. So I'm saying I'm assigning this user to the user that has just been created. So if I go to my views.py, you're gonna see I say driver underscore profile. This is a variable name equals user profile. I call that model. Then I say dot object dot get user. This user is a field in my user profile model equals user, this user that I just created here. So if you call this the user, for example, then this has to be the user. So if I change this, Control C, the user, this has to be the user as well, and then this has to be the user as well, and then this too has to be the user. Do you understand it? So I let me use a different name so it don't confuse you. So I assign a variable here, to get the user, and I save the user, and then driver.user, this driver model as well, this driver model also has a field called user. So if I go to my driver, I go to my models, you can see driver, it has a field called user. If I go back to my views.py, although this is a variable name, but I've assigned dform, and this dform is using the driver model. So yeah, that is it. So now I'm saying driver underscore profile equals user profile dot object dot get user. So the user in this user profile, I'm assigning it to this user. So I just created a user account for the driver, and then I have assigned the user account that I just created to this profile. Now that's not all. You need to say driver, this driver underscore profile dot, I'll go to, let me check, authentication, models, no, not this. Let me go back to my driver app and my views.py. So this is not it. So I'll say this driver arrow now driver arrow dot. Now this driver arrow, don't forget it's using a form called dform. So if I go to the forms, you can see it's using a model called driver. Now if I go to my model, you see it has a field called user profile, and I told you that we need to assign the user profile to the driver. So I'm just gonna copy this, and then I go back to my views.py. So I'm saying driver arrow dot user underscore profile equals this user profile that we just created, this driver profile. And now you can say driver arrow dot save. So that is it. I hope you understand. It's not very confusing. I'm gonna explain it all over again. So I declared a variable, I call it driver arrow equals dform.save, commit equals false. We don't want to save the changes to the database because we need to perform some other actions first. Now this dform is this form that we've already validated. If it is valid, we say dform, if dform that is valid, blah blah blah. So it means that the user has already imputed the information on this form. So I'll pass everything from this form to a variable called driver arrow. Now I say driver arrow dot user. Now I go to my model. Don't forget, on our driver registration, the field that the driver is imputing is vehicle type, driver's license, and plate number. So the other fields such as user profile, driver's log, we are generating it by ourselves. So that's why I go back to my views.py. So after saying commit equals false, I now say driver.user equals the user. The user is coming from here because in here we've already saved the user model. So on this the user, it is using user reg form. So we've already created a user account, and then we are assigning the user in the driver model field to this user account that we just created. Now we got the cleaned data plate number, so that we can use it to generate a unique identifier. And so we pass a variable called the plate number. This is a plate number. We say deform.cleanData. So it goes to this input, this plate number input, gets the information that is computed, and then pass it to this variable called the plate number. Now we say driver arrow dot drivers log, because there is a field inside this deform which uses the driver model, is called drivers log. Now I'll go back to my models. So we've done for the user. This is where we did for the user, driver arrow dot user, this user. And now we want to do for the drivers log. I'll go back to my models.py. This is a drivers log. So I say driver.drivers log equals logify the plate number, this variable, plus dash plus str the user.id. So this user that was created has an ID. If the ID is 1, it will get the plate number, add a dash to it, then add the ID to it. So that's it. Now the next field that we need to capture, so we've done for user, we've done for driver's log, and the driver has imputed the plate number, driver has imputed vehicle type, and then we need to pass on the user profile. I'll go back to my views.py, and then I will say driver underscore profile, this is a variable name, equals user profile. This is a model dot objects dot get user. There is a field called user in this user profile. So we are saying this field in this user profile should be the user, this user account that we just created. Now I say driver arrow dot user profile. Now go back to my models, user profile. Now we want to assign the user profile, driver arrow dot user underscore profile equals driver profile, this profile that we just created. And then we now say driver.save. So you see, we've passed the user, we've passed the user profile, we allow the driver to compute their plate number, the driver has selected their vehicle type, we've generated the driver's log, driver license is the driver that is gonna upload it, is approved. Once we click on save, this status is gonna be false by default. Created that is auto now, we don't need to do anything. Once you click on save, it's gonna capture the date and time, same as the modified as. Now we're done with everything, so now we need to display a message telling the driver that the registration has been successful. So I'm gonna say messages.success requests, comma, quotes, your account has been created successfully. This is it. So in here we can also pass the driver's first name. We can do that. Now once we display this message, we want to redirect the user maybe to login page. The user can log in, or because the account was just created, we can just redirect the user to the dashboard page or the home page. But for now we don't have a dashboard page, so I'm gonna redirect the user to the login page so that they can log in again to their account. But we haven't created the login URL or login page for now, so I'm just gonna redirect the user back to the home page. So I'm gonna say return redirects home. Now in here we use messages.success because everything it's fine, but in here, look at here, we use messages.warning. So you use whatever message for that particular instance. If you want to display an error message, you use messages.error, or there is messages.info, messages.success, and so on. So this is it. Now this is not all. Now in here we can also say maybe Elvis, your account has been created successfully. So we can capture the user's first name or last name, and then return it with a message here. So let me show you how to do that. So to do that, I can simply pass a variable here. I will say first underscore name equals user reg form dot cleaned underscore data square brackets quotes first underscore name. I'm gonna explain to you. So user reg form, this is here. We've saved the user reg form here. Now on the user registration form, let me see, authentication, models, the first name is on the user profile, not the user reg form. So I'll go back to my driver app and views.py. So this is its profile form, copy it. So I'm gonna say yeah, first name equals profile form dot cleaned data. Now I'll go back to the authentication and models, profile form dot cleaned data, first name. So I'm gonna copy first name, and then I'll go back to my driver app, to my views.py. Yeah, first name. So I've captured the first name here. Then if I want to capture the username as well, let me see where the username is. Authentication, models, username. So username is in my user model. So I'm gonna go back to my driver and my views.py. Now this user reg form, if the form is valid, profile form is valid, and user reg form is valid. So profile form, let me check, let me just be sure. Profile form, first name equals profile form. So let's be absolutely sure. Now profile form, I'll go to my authentication app, I'll go to my forms.py, and profile form is using the user profile model. And the user profile model, this is the user profile model which has a first name. So user profile, and then I'll go back to my driver app, views.py. So profile form, so this is correct, dot first name. Now I also want to capture the user name, and let's check this user profile, register form. So I'll go back to my authentication app, user register form, go to forms, and then this is it, user register form. It's using a model called user, and it has a field called username. So it's gonna be user register form. So I'll go back to my driver app, views.py. So profile form, I'm gonna use this user register form. So I'll say user name equals user register form dot clean data. So it's gonna be username. So let me make this different. The username equals user register form dot clean data username, because user register form has a field called username. So because I've captured these two, the first name and the username, I can customize this message now with their username and their first name. So to do that, I can put this in an F formatted string. I'll put F, then curly brace, then I'm gonna say first name. I'm gonna just, first name, comma, let's say the username as well. I want to concatenate their first name and their username. Let me take this off. First name, comma, curly brace again. Let me collapse this so my code will be clearer. Username. Your account has been created successfully. So I have personalized this message by displaying their first name and their username, and your account has been created successfully. Yeah. So we're saying this is our first if condition. If these forms are valid, it should perform all these actions. Now, if it's not valid, what should happen? So you need to put an else statement, so make sure your else statement is on the same line with your second if statement. Remember, we have, a first if statement, we have elif, and then we have, this is a nested if structure. So your else statements should be on the same line with this if statements. So I'm gonna say else. I'm just gonna display a message on the console. I will say print invalid form. Yeah. Now this is a good place to use error messages. You can also say messages dot error request, comma, invalid form. So I've used error message here. I have used success message here, and then I've also used warning message here. So that is it. So you can, if you use print invalid form, it's just gonna display on the console, but the user is not gonna see this message. But this one, the user will see messages.error invalid form. Now you need to close this. So this if statement, we've closed it with this else statement, and then we need to close this one, this elif, we need to close it as well with an else statement. So press enter, take care of your indentation, it has to be here. So yeah, make sure it's the same. I'm gonna say else, comma, so make sure it's on the same line with this if statement. If the request.user is authenticated, it should perform this action. If it's not authenticated and the method is post, it should perform this action. So now we need to close this if statement. So look at my indentation, and then you put in your code here. So come to this top, and then you pass this the form equals user register form. I'll copy all of that. I'll come here and then parentheses, do the same for the other one. The profile form equals this. Parentheses, and then for my last form, user register form equals now. That's it. So now we need to create a context dictionary. So I'm gonna say context equals curly braces, then I'm gonna pass in these forms. So I'm gonna say I'm just gonna call it the form colon the form, put a comma, the profile form comma colon the profile form, put a comma, and then user register form and that's it. So we need to create a context dictionary so that we can pass these forms inside our HTML. Now to pass all these forms inside the HTML, you need to put a comma here and then you type context. So this can be anything, it's just a variable name, so you can call this data if you want. So if you make this data, you need to call this data as well, so whatever you call it, if you call it Evans, for example, you need to make this Evans, but developers love using context or data. Context and then context. So when you do this, it means these forms will be accessible on this driverreg.html. So we do this is a get request. So with this, when the user initially goes to the form, these forms, when the user goes to the driver register page, this form is gonna be displayed on the HTML. Is a get request. Now if you go above, you will see I'm saying if request.user is authenticated, leave this part. Now I'm saying elif request.method is post. So while working with Django form, we use both post request and also get request. So if it is post, it means if the user has filled all the form and is trying to save, when you're trying to save into the database, is a post request. So if the method is post, it should perform all this action. It should check if the profile is valid, and perform all this action and all the rest. But if the request is get, that's why we have elif request.method is post. This is post, and then this is the get request. So in the event that the form is not submitted, if there's an error, it should display these forms again. So this is a get request. If there's an error, it should display this form, or initially when the user lands on the driver registration page, it should display this form. So this is what it means. And then this context dictionary, is to enable us access these forms on this driverreg.html. So this is all we need to do. Right now we need to go to this driverreg.html and then display this form inside driverreg.html so that the user can input their record, and then we'll see if the form is gonna be saved. If it's not saved and there's any error, we're gonna rectify it. Now to display this form on the HTML we've already created, I'm just gonna collapse some of this. Let me collapse this, and then I'll collapse this. Let me collapse my driver app and this as well. Now if you go to the templates, we did exactly the same thing for vendor. So I go to my vendor app, I go to my views.py. This is what we did also for our vendor, and then I go to my templates, I go to my vendor app, and then I go to my vendor rec.html. So on my vendor rec.html, this is where we call the form. This is it: user form, profile form, vendor form. So we just gonna do exactly the same thing, for our driver rec.html as well. So I'll go to my templates, and then this is my driver folder I created inside my templates and driver rec.html. Now the first thing you want to do is to generate your HTML boiler templates. So hold down your shift key and then question mark, and then just press enter. It's just gonna generate your HTML boiler templates. Like I told you, if this doesn't work for you, you can also get this on the internet. So to do that, you can simply go to your web browser and then just type on HTML boiler templates. Yeah. And then this is it, basic HTML boiler templates. So you're gonna see it. This is it. You can copy this code and then you paste it on your VS Code. So document title, I'm just gonna change it to driver registration page. Now inside your body, this is my body opening tag and this is the body closing tag. Inside this body, put less than sign and you type form. You can close it. Once you close it, it closes the form. Now go inside this form tag and then you type method equals to post. You can say action. This is not necessary, and then you put a curly brace. It's not necessary, but you can do it. I'm gonna explain. Action, put percentage sign, percentage URL, and then you open your quotes, and then inside this, the URL is, I'll go to my driver app, expand it, go to urls.py. This is it, driver reg, the name. So you copy this URL and then you go to the driver reg.html and then you paste it here. Now this driver reg URL I will show you. Go to driver, go to urls.py. You see driver reg /views.driver reg. This is the function. So if I go to my views, you will see this function. This is it, driver reg. Let me just make sure that this driver reg is the same thing as what I have here, driver reg. Yeah, so this URL uses this driver reg function, and so we are now saying the action of this our driver reg of this form should be this driver reg that has all that code that we just wrote. But this action is not really necessary, and your form is still gonna work whether or not you use it. It's gonna work because when you go to your driver app and you go to your views.py, this our function, driver reg function, you can see that we've passed this context dictionary inside driver reg.html. So this function is already running on driver reg.html because after writing all the codes, we said return, render, request, driver reg.html. So this code is part of this entire function. So on your forms, on this your driver reg.html forms, you don't really necessarily need to impute the form action. You don't necessarily need to impute this form action, but for some time, for some reasons, I love using it, because when your application gets bigger and then maybe you only working with your HTML pages, seeing this, you can easily remember that, okay, this form action is using this driver reg function, and then if you want to modify it, you can simply go to this driver reg is inside your driver app, and then you can easily go there and modify it. But if you don't have it here, and for example you have like 20 HTML templates and you see different forms, or on the same HTML template you see different forms, you're gonna be a little bit confused, and you're gonna start searching all your views.py to know the function that your form is using. Now the next thing you need to define is your enc type. So you need to come and say enc underscore type equals multi-part form data. We're defining this, we're using this because on this our form we have a lot of files to be uploaded. For example, the driver needs to upload their driver license, they need to upload their profile image, and other documents. So when you want a form to allow the user to upload documents, you need to state enc type equals multi-part form data. If you don't state this, then the user will not be able to upload any documents. So yeah. Now the next thing you need to declare is your csrf underscore token. So I'll go here, open a curly brace, and then percentage sign 2, and then you say csrf underscore token. So this stands for cross sites requests forgery. So sometimes when a user is trying to submit a form or perform certain action, an attacker can deceive the user into performing an action that they don't really want to perform, or redirect the form to other sites where your information can be stolen and all the rest. And that's why you need this csrf underscore token to protect your form from cross-site request attacks. If you don't do this, most times your form is not even gonna be submitted while you're using Django. So it's a security measure and it's very good, so don't forget to include it whenever you're working with Django forms. Now the next thing you need to do is just to display all your forms in here. So I'll go to my driver app and my views.py, so I'll know what I use for my form names. Now I pass the context here, and this is it. This is the name, dform. So I'm gonna copy this dform. I'll go back to my driver.html. So open curly brace, 2 curly brace. So I'm just gonna delete this. Press and shift and click on your curly brace sign 2 times, and then you paste your driver form. Then you do the same thing, go back to your views, and then this is it. So whatever is in here, and then you come back to your driver reg, you paste it here, and then do the same thing for the last one, user reg form, and then you paste it here as well. Now in here, in my views.py, this can be anything. I can call it Evans form if I want, Evans form, but it has to be dform. Now this is Evans form and this is dform. This dform here. dform, this variable name equals driver form. It has inherited the properties of driver form, so it has to be dform. This can be anything, but this has to be the name of your forms. So I'm just gonna change it back. Now driver reg, go back to driver reg.html, and then you can put, to display the forms in paragraph, put dot as underscore p, dot as underscore p, dot as underscore p. So without putting dot as underscore p is gonna be displayed, but I just need to put the forms in different paragraphs. Now I need a submit button, so I'm gonna type button, so button type equals submit, and then I'm gonna put the text I want to display on the button, so I'm just gonna say submit. So now we need to go to file, save all, and then we need to run our server, and then we're gonna test out the form. So I'll come to my terminal, and then type python manage.py run server, and then enter. So let me go to my home page and drop a link, so that once the form load, we can see the link to the driver registration. So I'll go to my templates and then home.html, and then just the way we have register your vendor account here, I'm just gonna duplicate this, and then I'm gonna say register as a driver, register as a driver, and this URL is not gonna be vendor reg, it's gonna be, I'll go to my driver app URLs, is gonna be this, back to home.html, and then this, and go to file, click on save all. Then I'm gonna open my page by clicking on this link. So now my server is up and running, and then this is it, register as a driver. So I'm gonna click on this link. So I'm having an error, model form has no model specified. Okay, now go back to your driver app and then go to the forms.py. You can see in here we just specified model equals driver, but this has to be inside a class meta like we did. If you go to our vendor app and go to the forms.py, you can see class meta. So you need to put everything inside the meta class. So I'm gonna come here and say class meta, and so this indentation they have to move back, tab, yeah, go to file and click on save all, go back to your page, and then you can refresh your page. So here we go. Now our form is up, and then like I told you, this is just basic rendering of Django forms. After this lecture, from the next lectures, we're gonna start designing our home page using HTML, CSS, Bootstrap, and make it very beautiful and interactive, and JavaScript as well. So yeah, this is it. Plate number, I'm just gonna input a plate number, and then vehicle type is a drop down, I'm gonna use car. Then driver's license, so I'm just gonna select any file, and then yeah, put first name, last name, date of birth, address, profile picture, cover photo, I'll choose anything, and then address line to nationality Japan, city whatever I want, zip code, mobile number, username, Midas, email, password, and then confirm password as well. And then we're gonna click on the submit button. If everything is alright, there's no error, it should submit. But if there's an error, we're gonna fix it. So I'm just gonna click on submit. So after clicking on submit, we have an error. It said value error as driver reg model instance passed to related filters must be saved. And then it's showing our errors on line 29. So this is displaying because in our settings we said debug equals true, but when the project goes live we'll say debug equals false. So if there's an error on your page, the user is not gonna see the error like this. Otherwise they can use the information to hack into your system. So we're gonna rectify it now. So I'll go to my views.py and then I'll go to line 29. This is it. Yeah. So now in here, when we do this, the user.role equals user.driver, we need to save it because here we said commit equals false. So we didn't save the user, but we are trying to pass this user to this driver. So we need to say the user dot save, and then click on file and save all. So we need to make some modification before we proceed. Now for this is not correct, this is not gonna work because the user profile has not been created. So let's delete this line of code from 30 to 33, delete it. So now I'm gonna say to capture the user profile, I'm gonna declare a variable. I will say profile equals, don't forget we're working with profile form, we didn't use it. Profile equals profile form dot save. I will say commit equals false. Then I will say profile dot user equals the user. Now because profile dot the user, because this profile form, I will show you authentication. Go to authentication app, go to forms, you will see profile form. It is using the user profile model. So if I go to my model, I'll go to my user profile, you see it has a field called user. That's why in here I said profile.user equals the user. I am passing this created user to this profile user. And then now I can say profile.save. And then go to file, click on save all. So here we created the user. We've created the user here. And then we've also created their profile here. And then here we use the driver registration form where they can upload their plate number and their license. Yeah, so everything should work now. Now here we can't use a profile form directly, we can't save it directly. So here we've already passed it as a variable as a profile form. So copy this, and then it's gonna be here. profile equals the profile form.save commit equals false, and this is gonna work now. But this is different from saving it, is different from getting a record here. If you want to get the record, you can get it from like this directly, profile form.clean data, or you can also say profile dot first name. For example, if you say profile dot first underscore name, it's still gonna work. It's still gonna give you this. So if I say the first name equals profile dot first underscore name, is still gonna work. So now let me comment this out because I've already gotten the first name here, and then I'm gonna go to file and save all. So for simplicity, let's take off this, and then so we'll say the first name equals profile.first name, this profile.first name, and then I'm gonna get the username. So I'm gonna say the username equals it's gonna be the user dot username, and then in here, this is an error. This sign is supposed to be after the F, and then we'll capture this, the first name, put it inside here, and then the username. Yeah, this is already correct. Yeah, so this is it. I hope you understand what we did here. So the first name equals, this is a variable name, and then we say profile.first name. Profile, where is profile coming from? Profile is coming from here. This is a variable name as well, and then it's we're passing the profile form here. This is the profile form, which uses the profile form model, and in this profile form model we have a field called first name. That's why we said the first name equals profile.first name, and then we said the username equals the user.username. Now the user is here. This is it. The user is using a model called user, and inside this user model there's a field called username, and then we displayed it inside this success message by calling the registered user's first name, and then with the username, and say your account has been created successfully. So now I'll go to file and then click on save all, and then I will open my web browser again and click on register as a driver here. So I'm just gonna fill this form again. So now everything is filled. Just make sure that you follow this password convention, otherwise you're gonna have an error. But when we design our HTML form very well, our HTML templates, we're gonna take up this and customize our own message, and make sure that you've uploaded the files, the picture, the driver's license, the cover photo, and then I'm gonna hit the save button now, submit button. Yeah, so once I do that, if it's successfully registered, it's gonna redirect to the home page, to the home page. Yeah, so our record has been saved successfully. So to check if it was saved on our database, we can simply come to this address bar and then put a /, type admin, and then I'll simply log in. Now if I go to my driver, so it's supposed to be saved, but the driver is not saved, so I'm gonna check my code now. And then here we say driver arrow equals form.save commit equals false. So when we finish doing all this, we forgot to save the driver instance. So I'm gonna say driver arrow dot save. and then go back to file, go back to save all, and then you can log out from your admin panel and then try to resubmit your form. I'm gonna run my server again. Terminal, new terminal, python manage.py, run server. So I'm gonna click on my link again, and then I'll go to my register as driver link. Now if I go to my register as driver link, is not working because I'm still logged in on my admin panel. And remember, in our code we wrote this statement that if user is authenticated, it should redirect back to home, and that's why if I'm clicking, it's not going, but the message is not showing because we need to customize our message to display on the template, which we've not done. So I'll need to go back to my admin panel and then make sure I am logged out. See, look at the message, you are already logged in, so I'll have to log out, and then I'll go back in here and refresh my page and then click on register as a driver. Then I'm gonna fill my form all over again. I'll choose a username and then choose a password and repeat my password. So then I'm gonna click on submit. So I think it says user with this email already exists, so I'm gonna change it. Whatever. I'll put my password again, and then I'll make sure that I upload my files. And the last one, just make sure that everything is correct, and then I'll click on submit. Now we have another error. It's saying not null constraint failed, driver_driver.userprofile_ib. Now this is where the error is. We are supposed to save this user profile first, so I'm gonna take this code up, cut it, I'm gonna leave it here, and then after we save the profile, this is a driver form now. So driver equals dform.save commit equals false, driver.user equals the user. Now you look at the driver model, go to models, you can see driver model, it has a user profile which we've not captured. So I'm gonna go back to my views. So we're gonna say now driver arrow dot user underscore profile equals profile, this profile that we just saved, profile equals profile. Yeah, now you go to file and click on save all. So this is how we debug. If you have any error, it's gonna show you on your page, and then you rectify your error and then you try again. So now I'm gonna fill out my form again, and I hope there's no more errors. So I'll go to here and then fill the form all over again. And then once the form is fully filled, I'm gonna hit the submit button. Okay, date of birth, I'll select whatever I want and then click on submit. So yeah, I think it worked. Now I'm gonna log into the admin page to see if my record is there. And so you see, look at it, James Tutu Elvis, your account has been created successfully. It's showing in here because we've rendered the message framework. On the message framework is rendered on this page, but on our HTML page is not rendered yet. That's why you didn't see it. But when you try to log into the admin panel, it shows. So I'm just gonna put my login details and check it out. So now I'll go to my driver model, and then this is it. This is the record, that we just created now. And if I go to my users, you'll see this is the record as well we just created, and it also created the user profile as well, the same thing. So yeah, we've come to the end of our lectures for vendor account creation, driver account creation, and also our authentication. From the next lectures, we're gonna design our pages, our HTML pages. We're gonna use JavaScript to make it dynamic and interactive. We're gonna use CSS, and we're gonna use HTML and Bootstrap to make our layout beautiful. And then after that, we'll continue with login functionalities, user profile, updating your user profile. We're gonna create dashboard, and create other functionalities for our applications. If these lectures are useful to you, don't forget to subscribe to my channel and also like the videos. If you have any issues, make sure you drop it on the comment section, and I'll be available to respond to your issues. And then I'll see you again in the coming days. My next lectures is gonna be on our React and Django employee record management web application, where we're using React and Python and Django to create a web app. And then after that, we're gonna jump back to this, and then in between I'm gonna be teaching Docker and Kubernetes on this playlist. I'm gonna teach Git and version control. I'm gonna teach C# and ASP.NET, and also some Java. So I will see you again in the coming days. Thank you and bye bye.